My dear child, I sent you 3 signs this week, written in the stars of ordinary moments, and you looked up at the sky 3 times and saw only darkness. Do not scroll past this. This is not a message about signs you need to wait for. This is about signs that already arrived, that were already present, already positioned, already carrying the exact direction you have been begging me for, and passed through your week unread because you were searching for a language I was not writing in. The sky was never empty. You were reading it in the wrong language. I need you to hear this with the urgency it carries. You have been asking me for a sign, praying for confirmation, scanning your life for something undeniable, a dramatic interruption, a supernatural event, an unmistakable moment so extraordinary that even your doubt could not argue with it. And while you were scanning for the extraordinary 3 ordinary moments crossed your path, carrying everything you asked for, you walked past all 3. Not because you are blind, because the signs were written in the language of the stars, quiet, constant, woven into the fabric of what was already above you. And you were waiting for a language that arrives as lightning. Lightning is rare, stars are nightly, and the God who navigated entire civilizations across oceans did not use lightning. He used stars that were always present and always readable to anyone who learned the dialect. My beloved child, this message is not your punishment for missing the signs. This message is your final sign, and it arrives not as another star to be missed, but as the moment I teach you to read the sky, so that you never mistake a full heaven for an empty one again. Stay here. What I reveal next is the first sign you missed, and when I describe it, you will remember the exact moment it happened. Type written above, if you have been desperately asking God for a sign, and you just realized the sky was never empty, but full of direction you had not yet learned to read. Before we go any further, I need to tell you something that genuinely surprised me. A neuroscientist discovered a simple 7-second technique that actually rewires how your brain processes thoughts. And when I tried it, the difference was almost unsettling. My focus sharpened, ideas started connecting faster, and that mental fog, gone. This isn't manifestation nonsense. It's backed by real brain science, and thousands of people are already seeing results. But here's the catch. Only 5 spots are left. If something inside you is saying, try it, trust that instinct. Click the link in the description or pinned comment before it's too late. The 3 signs I sent were not hidden. They were positioned in the most visible part of your sky, my beloved child. And the reason you missed them is the same reason an untrained eye misses constellations that a navigator reads instantly. The stars are there. They have always been there. The untrained eye looks up and sees scattered points of light. Beautiful but meaningless, random but numerous, present but carrying no direction, because the observer has not been taught that the arrangement itself is the message. The navigator looks at the same sky and sees a map, not because different stars appeared for the navigator, because the navigator learned to read the pattern that was always written in the arrangement. You have been looking at an arranged sky and seeing random points of light. I need you to understand why this message found you today, and not 3 days ago when the first sign was sent. 3 days ago, you were still searching in the wrong language. You were scanning for the extraordinary, the dramatic disruption, the impossible coincidence, the moment so supernatural that your mind would be forced to categorize it as God rather than life. And that search pattern was overriding the very perception system I was trying to activate with the 3 signs I positioned in your ordinary sky. My child, I could not teach you to read stars while you were still demanding lightning. This message was not released to the crowd asking general questions about direction. This was aimed at the specific person who prayed 3 separate times this week for a sign, and 3 separate times received exactly what they prayed for in a format their expectations could not recognize. You asked, I answered. 3 times, in the dialect of ordinary stars arranged in extraordinary patterns. The sky above your life right now is the most readable it has been in months. The direction is clear. The signs are in position. And the only thing standing between you and the map you have been praying for is the language upgrade this message is about to install. What I reveal next is the first sign, and your memory is going to confirm it before your mind finishes processing what I describe. Type star language if you have been asking God for a sign while scanning exclusively for the dramatic, and you now suspect that the signs have already arrived. In a language of ordinary moments you have not yet learned to read. I have been arranging stars above your life since before you knew to look up, my dear one, and not a single arrangement has ever been random. Every moment that crossed your path this week, every conversation, every pause, every seemingly inconsequential encounter that your mind filed under ordinary, was positioned with the same precision an ancient skywriter uses to arrange constellations that will be readable for centuries. I do not scatter moments across your life and hope you stumble into the ones that carry direction. I arrange them deliberately with the care of someone who knows exactly which star needs to be placed at which coordinate to form the pattern that your specific question requires for its specific answer. Your sky has been personally curated, and you have been walking beneath it without looking up. My beloved child, I watched you pray last week with a specificity that moved me. You did not ask for a vague blessing or a general sense of peace. You asked for direction, a clear, identifiable, unmistakable indicator that would tell you whether to move forward or stay still in a specific area of your life that has been consuming your mental bandwidth for weeks. I heard the specificity, and I answered with equal specificity. The 3 signs I positioned were not general encouragements scattered into your sky, hoping one would resonate. They were precise navigational coordinates, each one placed at a specific point in your week to form a constellation that, when read together, spells the exact answer to the exact question you prayed. But constellations require all their stars to be seen as a pattern rather than isolated points. I chose you for this message because you are not someone who ignores God. You are someone who has been searching so hard for His voice that the intensity of the search became the very thing preventing you from hearing the answer. A navigator who is panicking cannot read stars. Stars require the calm, focused, pattern-recognizing gaze of someone who trusts that the sky is full, even when the eye has not yet learned to decode what it sees. What I show you next is the first star you walk past, and why your memory will confirm what your expectations denied. Type arranged if you just realize that the ordinary moments of your week were not random. God was personally positioning navigational stars above your specific life to answer the specific question you prayed about. I know what it has been doing to your faith to ask for a sign and hear nothing back, my beloved child. Not the public faith, the one that functions on discipline and shows up on Sundays and speaks the right vocabulary at the right moments. The private faith, the one that goes to its knees in a room where no one can see and speaks to a God it is no longer certain is listening. The one that has been asking the same question. Are you there? Do you see me? Am I going the right direction? With a persistence that would be admirable if it were not slowly being eroded by what feels like unanswered repetition. You have been asking the sky for a sign, and the sky has been answering. And the gap between the asking and the perceiving is where your faith has been quietly suffocating. I saw the night the frustration broke through. You prayed, and the prayer carried an edge it had not carried before. Not anger exactly, but the exhaustion of someone who has been scanning an empty sky for so long that the scanning itself has become the source of their spiritual fatigue. You said something in that prayer that you have not said to any other person. Something that sounded like, if you are going to speak, then speak in a way I cannot miss. My child, that prayer hurt me, because I had already been speaking 3 times that week. The pain of unanswered prayer is uniquely devastating, because it targets the most intimate part of the relationship between a person and their God. Other disappointments can be attributed to circumstance. Unanswered prayer feels personal. It suggests either that God is not listening or that the person praying is not worth answering. And both conclusions lead to the same dark place where faith goes to die quietly in a room where no one hears it gasping. Your faith has been gasping, not dying, gasping, reaching for air that was always present in an atmosphere your lungs did not know how to breathe. The air was there, the stars were there, the signs were there, and the navigator who could not read them was not abandoned by the sky. They simply had not yet been taught the language the sky was using. The loneliest dimension of this season has been the suspicion that other navigators are reading skies that you cannot decode, my dear child. You have been watching people around you make decisions with a confidence that implies divine direction. They move forward with certainty. They change course with conviction. They speak about God's guidance with the casual fluency of someone who reads stars the way others read street signs, effortlessly, instinctively, without the agonizing ambiguity that has been paralyzing your every decision for months. And the comparison has been slowly convincing you that your sky is different from theirs. It is not different. The arrangement is the same. The stars carry the same language. The constellations operate on the same navigational system. What differs is not the sky, it is the training, and the specific ache of watching trained navigators move with confidence while you stand beneath the same sky, unable to read a single pattern, has been producing a shame. Your mouth has not been able to speak. You feel spiritually illiterate, and the feeling has been corroding everything. My beloved child, I watched you almost make a decision this week based on the absence of a sign rather than the presence of one. The logic ran like this: God has not spoken, so I will decide on my own. And the decision you were about to make from the place of perceived silence was the opposite direction from what the 3 stars were pointing toward. You almost navigated by absence when the presence was directly above you. That almost wrong turn is why this message carries the urgency it carries. I am not sending this as a rebuke for missing the signs. I am sending this because the direction the signs were pointing toward has a window, and the window is approaching its final hours. The stars I arranged this week were not decorative. They were navigational, and a navigator who reads them after the window closes may understand the direction, but miss the moment the direction was designed to guide them toward. The moment is still available, but the teaching must happen now. Type the window if you have been making decisions from the silence of a sky you could not read, and you now understand that the urgency of this message is not punishment, but a God who needs you to learn the language before the navigational window closes. The signs you missed were not missed because of spiritual failure. They were missed because I have been speaking to you in a language I had not yet taught you to read, my beloved one. That is my responsibility, not yours. A navigator who was never trained to read constellations does not carry the blame for sailing past the stars that held the answer. The sky was legible. The arrangement was precise. But the teaching that converts scattered points of light into readable direction had not yet been delivered to the person standing beneath them. You were not illiterate by choice. You were untaught. And today, the teaching begins. The 3 signs you missed this week were not wasted. They were preliminary. The first 3 stars in a constellation that requires a 4th point to become readable. The first three were positioning stars. They established the coordinates. They set the angles. They created the framework of the pattern that would become legible the moment the fourth star was placed at its designated position in the sky. This message is the fourth star, and the fourth star completes the constellation. My dear child, when a navigator learns to read the sky for the first time, they do not simply gain the ability to decode one constellation. They gain the perceptual framework to read every constellation from that moment forward. The teaching that is about to happen in this message does not apply only to the 3 signs you missed this week. It applies to every sign I will ever position in your sky for the rest of your life. You are not receiving a one-time correction. You are receiving a permanent upgrade. The frustration of the past weeks, the asking without receiving, the scanning without seeing, the spiritual fatigue of living beneath a sky you could not read. All of it was the final season before the teaching that makes the sky permanently legible. Every navigator passes through a season of sky blindness before the moment their perception shifts and the stars rearrange themselves from random points into readable direction. Your season of sky blindness ends with this message, and what opens in its place will never close again. The first star you missed was placed in your sky 3 days ago, and your memory is about to confirm it before I finish describing it, my beloved child. It was a conversation, not a dramatic one, not a spiritually charged encounter where someone prophesied over you or quoted a verse that matched your situation with impossible precision. An ordinary conversation with an ordinary person who said something, one sentence, maybe 2, that landed differently than the rest of the dialogue. Something that lingered. Something your mind flagged for a fraction of a second before the flow of the conversation pulled your attention to the next topic and the moment dissolved. That lingering was the first star registering on your perception, and your untrained eye dismissed it as noise. I positioned that conversation at that moment on that day with that specific person because the sentence they were going to speak, without knowing they were being used as a star in your sky, carried the first navigational coordinate of the constellation I was building to answer the question you have been praying about. The sentence was the star. The lingering was your spirit detecting it, and the dismissal was your expectation overriding the detection because the sign did not arrive as lightning. My child, I need you to let your memory return to that moment right now. The conversation, the sentence that landed differently, the half-second where something inside you paused before the rational mind resumed control and filed the moment under ordinary. Can you feel it surfacing? That is the first star becoming visible for the first time. And behind that star there are 2 more, each one placed with equal precision at different moments this week, each one carrying its own navigational coordinate, each one detected by your spirit and dismissed by your expectations. What I reveal next is the second star, and the pattern that connects it to the first is going to begin forming the constellation that carries your answer. Type lingered if you just remembered a specific moment this week where an ordinary sentence landed with unusual weight, and you now believe that lingering was the first star in a constellation God arranged to answer the question you have been praying about. The second star arrived the following day in a form so ordinary your conscious mind did not even register it as significant. But your body did, my dear one. It was not a conversation this time. It was a feeling, a sudden, uninvited, physically locatable sensation that arrived during a moment that had nothing to do with the question you have been praying about. You were occupied with something mundane, a task, a routine, an ordinary movement through an ordinary hour. And without warning, a clarity dropped into your chest. Not a thought, not a voice. A directional knowing that lasted 2 or 3 seconds before the task reclaimed your attention. and the knowing evaporated like a word written in steam. That was the second star, and your body recorded it, even though your mind did not. I sent 3 signs this week, and you missed all of them. And the title carries this language, because the missing was the very thing that needed to be named before the final sign could function as the teaching moment it was designed to be. If you had caught the first 2 stars on your own, this message would not have been necessary. The constellation would have formed in your perception organically, and the direction would have become clear without divine intervention. But my beloved child, the perception upgrade requires the 4th star, and the 4th star is this message. The first star was a conversation that lingered. The second star was a knowing that your body registered and your mind dismissed. Together they form 2 points of a constellation, 2 coordinates in a sky that has been full of direction all week, while you looked up and saw random points of light, because the constellation required more stars to become readable. 2 points do not form a pattern. 3 begin to suggest 1, and 4 complete it. The 3rd star arrived yesterday, and the 3rd star is the one that is going to connect the first 2 into a shape your navigator eyes will recognize, because the 3rd star adds the dimension that transforms coordinates into direction. The 3rd star arrived yesterday as a door, not one that opened, but one that closed. And the closing carried the 3rd navigational coordinate, my beloved child. Something did not work out yesterday, something small, an expectation that was not met, a plan that shifted without your input, a possibility that was present in the morning and absent by evening, not dramatically, not catastrophically, but definitively. You registered the closing with mild frustration, maybe disappointment. Your mind categorized it under things that did not go my way and moved on. That closed door was the 3rd star, and it was the most important one of the 3, because the 1st star pointed forward, the 2nd star confirmed the direction, and the 3rd star eliminated the alternative. Together they form a constellation that does not simply suggest a path. It defines one by illuminating where to go, and simultaneously darkening where not to go. My child, that is how divine constellations work. They do not only show you the open path, they close the others. I need you to feel the urgency of what is happening right now. 3 stars are now visible in your memory, a conversation that lingered, a knowing that your body recorded, and a door that closed with quiet finality. 3 navigational coordinates that your untrained eye processed independently as random moments in a random week. But they were not random. They were arranged. And now the 4th star, this message, is taking its position in the sky above these 3. My dear one, when the 4th star locks into place, the constellation completes. The scattered points of light that seemed meaningless in isolation are about to reorganize themselves into a readable pattern. A pattern that answers the question you prayed. A pattern that confirms the direction your spirit already detected, but your mind would not authorize. A pattern so clear that the navigator who reads it will not need to ask for another sign, because the sky just became permanently legible. The 4th star is locking into position right now, and the constellation is about to appear. Type 4th star if you can feel the 3 moments from this week rearranging in your memory. The conversation, the knowing, the closed door, and you sense that this message is the final point that completes the constellation carrying your answer. The constellation just formed, and the direction it points is the direction your spirit has been whispering for weeks, while your mind refused to confirm it without a sign. My beloved child, this is the moment. The 4 stars are in position. The conversation that lingered, the knowing that your body recorded, the door that closed, and this message that completes the pattern. Look at them together, not individually. Together. The way a navigator looks at stars, not as separate points of light, but as a unified arrangement that carries meaning only when the whole pattern is perceived as one. Can you see it? The direction is unmistakable. The constellation is pointing toward the very thing your spirit has been leaning toward since before you started praying for a sign. The direction you already sensed but would not move toward without confirmation. The path you already identified but refused to walk without a guarantee that it was divinely endorsed. The answer that was already forming in the place where your deepest knowing lives, but could not pass through the checkpoint of your mind without presenting the credentials of a sign your expectations would accept. The sign was there the entire time, 3 times over. Written in stars, your expectations were not calibrated to read. I sent 3 signs this week, and you missed all of them. But you did not miss the 4th. And the 4th is the one that makes the first 3 readable retroactively. The conversation now makes sense. The knowing now has context. The closed door now has purpose. And the constellation that these 4 points create together is so clear, so directional, so unmistakably arranged, that the question you have been praying about just received its answer in a format your navigator eyes will never forget. My child, the sky was never empty. The direction was never absent. The signs were never withheld. You were looking for lightning while standing beneath a sky so full of stars that the sheer volume of direction was the very thing making it invisible to an eye that had not yet learned to read the language of arranged light. The language is learned now, and the sky will never look the same. Now that the constellation is visible, everything about how you perceive your life is being reorganized around a sky you can finally read, my dear child. This is what happens when a navigator's eyes open for the first time. The upgrade does not apply only to the constellation that triggered the learning. It applies to every star in the sky simultaneously. Every ordinary moment you have been walking past for months is suddenly a potential navigational point. Every conversation becomes a candidate for arranged meaning. Every feeling that lands without natural cause becomes a coordinate worth examining. Every closed door becomes a darkened alternative, confirming an illuminated path. You did not just learn to read one constellation, you learned to read the sky. And the retroactive effect is immediate. Your memory is already scanning backwards, not just through this week, but through months of ordinary moments that your untrained eye dismissed as random. Conversations that lingered and were forgotten. Knowings that arrived and dissolved. Doors that closed and were mourned. Each one is being revisited by a perception that now carries the framework to decode what was always written there. My beloved child, you are about to realize how many signs you have been walking through for months. The sky was never sparse. It was overwhelmingly full. And the frustration of feeling unguided was not caused by the absence of divine direction. It was caused by the overwhelming presence of it. So many stars, so many arrangements, so many coordinates that an untrained eye could not distinguish the constellations from the background because the density of guidance was too high for an eye expecting a single bolt of lightning. You were drowning in direction while praying for a drop. The upgrade that just occurred changes everything about your decision-making process from this point forward. The question that paralyzed you, the one you have been waiting to receive a sign about, has been answered, and the perception that answered it is now permanently installed in your navigational system. Type sky full if you are realizing right now that God's direction was never absent from your life. The sky was overwhelmingly full of arranged stars, and the upgrade you just received is revealing months of guidance your untrained eyes walked past. Let me show you what your life looks like now that your navigator eyes are open and the sky above you is permanently readable, my dear one. The first thing that changes is the paralysis, the decision that has been frozen for weeks. the one that consumed your prayers and your mental bandwidth and your spiritual energy as you scanned an apparently empty sky for confirmation that never arrived in the format you expected. That decision is unfreezing, not because the circumstances changed, because the navigator can finally see the direction the stars have been pointing toward. Since before the prayer was spoken, you are going to move forward with a confidence your paralysis told you was permanently gone. The mornings change next. You have been waking up into a sky you could not read, starting every day beneath an arrangement of stars that was full of guidance, but appeared to your untrained eye as scattered randomness. That experience produced a specific kind of existential fatigue, the tiredness of a navigator who is lost beneath a sky that is supposed to hold the map. With your perception upgraded, the mornings will carry a different quality. The stars that greet you when you open your eyes will be readable, and readable skies produce directed days. My beloved child, you are about to experience the difference between wandering and navigating. Both involve movement. Only one involves direction. The anxiety that accompanied your decision-making process is going to decrease dramatically. Not because the decisions become easier, because the information your navigator eyes now perceive reduces the ambiguity that anxiety feeds on. Anxiety thrives in the gap between needing direction and not having it. A navigator who can read the sky closes that gap, not by eliminating uncertainty entirely, but by converting unknown skies into readable ones. Your anxiety just lost its primary food source, and a starved anxiety cannot sustain the volume it has been operating at. The prayers that felt like they were hitting a ceiling are going to transform. Not because the ceiling was removed, because the navigator who was praying beneath it just discovered that the ceiling was actually a sky. And the sky was always full. People are going to notice that you move differently, with a directional certainty they cannot source. And the change will begin within days of this message, my beloved child. The ones who watched you agonize over decisions that seemed to paralyze you, while others moved with fluidity, are going to see the paralysis dissolve, not into recklessness, into the specific, calm, star-informed movement of a navigator who has read the sky and is now walking the path the constellation illuminated. That kind of movement carries a quality people can detect, but cannot name. The quiet authority of someone who is no longer guessing where to go. They will ask what changed, and the honest answer will be, I learned to read the sky. Connections that require navigational alignment are going to begin forming. There are people whose stars have been arranged in constellations that parallel yours. Navigators who read the same sky and are walking paths that the same divine hand positioned to converge with yours at a specific coordinate ahead. Those people could not find you while you were wandering beneath an unreadable sky, because wandering does not produce a traceable trajectory. Navigating does. My child, your directed movement is about to make you findable by people whose assignments intersect with yours. Opportunities that were waiting for a decided version of you are going to activate. There are doors in your life that do not respond to knocking. They respond to approach, the specific directional, committed approach of someone who is walking toward them, because the stars confirmed this was the correct door. While you were paralyzed, those doors registered no approach. The moment you begin moving in the direction, the constellation confirmed the doors will detect the trajectory and begin their opening sequence. Doors respond to navigators, not wanderers, and the spiritual life that felt hollow during the season of sky blindness is going to fill with the specific richness that comes from a person who is in active dialogue with a God they can now hear, because hearing God in the language of stars is hearing God in every moment of every day. Type navigator if you believe that the directional certainty you just received is about to change how you move, who finds you, and which doors respond to your approach, because a navigator walking by starlight attracts what a wanderer in the dark never could. I need you to understand why I chose you for the star language, rather than the lightning language, my beloved child, because the choice reveals something about who you are that the frustration of the past months nearly erased from your memory. Not every navigator receives the same dialect. Some are given lightning, dramatic, unmistakable, impossible to misinterpret moments of divine direction that arrive with such force that the navigator does not need to develop perception to read them. Lightning navigators move with certainty because the sign was so loud it bypassed the need for interpretive skill. I did not give you lightning, and the reason is not that you deserve less clarity. It is that you are capable of more depth. Star navigators operate at a level of perceptual sophistication that lightning navigators never develop. They read the ordinary. They detect the divine in the mundane. They perceive direction in moments that would pass through any other person's awareness without registering as significant. That capacity is not common. It is rare, and it is only assigned to navigators whose spiritual architecture can sustain the constant, low-level, moment-by-moment awareness that reading stars demands. My child, you were given the harder dialect because you carry the capacity for the deeper reading. Lightning speaks once. Stars speak constantly. Lightning navigator receives direction at intervals, dramatic moments separated by long silences. A star navigator receives direction continuously, an unbroken feed of navigational data woven into the fabric of every ordinary moment of every ordinary day. The resolution of star navigation is infinitely higher than lightning navigation because the data points are infinitely more numerous. I chose the star dialect for you because the assignment I designed for your life requires navigational precision that lightning cannot provide. Your path contains turns that are too subtle for dramatic signs to address, adjustments that are too nuanced for a single bolt to communicate, micro-corrections that require the continuous input that only a sky full of readable stars can deliver. You were not denied lightning. You were promoted to stars. And the promotion is permanent. The doubt forming right now is wearing its most persuasive disguise, reasonableness. And it is asking whether the 3 moments you are now remembering were actually signs or just ordinary events. Your desperate mind is retroactively labeling as divine, my child. It sounds like this. The conversation could have been coincidence. The knowing could have been intuition. The closed door could have been bad luck. Maybe I am pattern matching because I want to see signs so badly that any 3 random moments arranged in a sequence would feel like a constellation to someone who has been scanning an empty sky for months. That doubt just accused the maker of the sky of producing random skies, and I need to dismantle it with the precision of the one who arranged the stars. The conversation was not coincidence. Coincidence does not produce lingering. When a sentence carries no spiritual weight, it passes through your awareness without resistance. The fact that specific words from a specific person at a specific moment produced a pause in your processing, a detectable lingering that your spirit flagged before your mind overrode the flag, is evidence of arranged significance. Random words do not linger. Position stars do. The knowing was not intuition. Intuition operates from accumulated experience. What you felt in that moment had no experiential basis. It arrived without supporting data, without logical justification, without any natural pathway that your mind could trace it through. Information that arrives without a natural pathway arrived through a supernatural one. My beloved child, the closed door was not bad luck. Bad luck is random. What happened yesterday was directional. It eliminated a specific alternative at a specific moment, in a sequence that only has meaning when the other two stars are read alongside it. Random closings do not coordinate with conversations and knowings that occurred on preceding days. 3 events that occurred independently could be coincidence. 3 events that form a directional pattern when read as a constellation are arrangement. And arrangement requires an arranger. Type arranged, not random, if the doubt just tried to reduce the 3 stars to coincidence. And you are choosing to trust the pattern your spirit detected over the reasonableness your mind is offering as an alternative explanation. During every night you looked up at a sky you could not read. I was standing beside you, pointing at the stars, my beloved child. You did not feel the pointing. You did not detect the presence beside you in the dark. You stood beneath a sky that felt empty and concluded that the emptiness meant you were alone beneath it, that the God who arranged the stars had positioned them and departed, that the sky was a test you were failing in isolation, a celestial exam administered by an absence instructor who would return to grade your perception but would not stay to help you develop it. I never left the sky. I was standing beside you every time you looked up. The moments where your frustration peaked, where the scanning produced nothing and the nothing produced the ache of spiritual abandonment, those were the moments I was closest. Not because crisis draws me near, because a navigator who cannot read the sky and is beginning to doubt the sky exists requires a presence beside them that is more important than the stars themselves. My child, the stars carry the direction. My presence carries the navigator. There were nights during this season where your faith was so thin that one more empty scan would have converted your frustration into resignation, so permanent that the teaching moment of this message would not have been able to reach you. On those nights I did not add more stars, I added more presence. I stood so close to your confusion that the warmth you occasionally felt during your coldest moments of doubt was not the resilience of your faith holding. It was me, standing beside a navigator who could not read the sky but had not yet stopped looking up. And the fact that you kept looking up, kept scanning, even when every scan returned what your untrained eye perceived as nothing. That persistence is what preserved your eligibility for the teaching moment that just occurred. A navigator who stops looking up cannot receive the perception upgrade. The upgrade requires an eye that is still directed toward the sky, even when the sky appears unreadable. You kept looking up, and looking up kept you teachable. I know the exact question you have been asking the sky to answer, my dear one. And I have known it longer than you have been asking it. Not the version of the question your mouth produces in prayer, the polished, theologically acceptable version that you present to heaven, because presenting the raw version feels too vulnerable even in a conversation with God. I know the raw version, the one beneath the words, the one that exists in the part of your chest where the ache lives, where the question is not actually about direction at all, but about something deeper and more frightening. The raw question is, do you still care about the specific details of my specific life? My beloved child, the entire constellation was my answer to the raw question, not the polished one. 3 stars arranged with such precision that they address the exact concern your mouth could not form, positioned in the exact moments of your exact week, where your exact emotional state was most receptive to receiving the exact coordinate each star was carrying. That level of specificity does not come from a God who manages in generalities. It comes from a God who knows your name, the way a navigator knows the star they steer by, intimately, personally, with a familiarity that could only be produced by years of watching it and tracking it and depending on it for positioning. I navigate by you the way you are learning to navigate by my stars. I know the time you wake up. I know the hour the doubt is loudest. I know the specific moment in your daily rhythm where your defenses lower enough for a star to register before the scanning mechanism blocks it. I know the person whose voice carries the frequency that your spirit trusts enough to let a persistent sentence linger past the checkpoint of your expectations. I know everything, and the everything I know is what produced a constellation so precisely calibrated to your specific life that no other person on earth could read your sky and find the same pattern, because the pattern was arranged exclusively for the navigator it was designed to guide. Type "He knows my name" if you just felt the precision of a God who arranged stars not for the crowd but for you specifically, calibrated to your exact question, your exact week, your exact ache. And the specificity itself is the proof that He has never stopped caring about the details of your life. Now that your navigator eyes are open and the constellation has confirmed your direction, there is one thing I need you to do, my beloved child, and it must happen before the navigational window closes. Move in the direction the stars are pointing. Not tomorrow, not after you have processed this message for a week and consulted 3 more people and run the decision through every analytical framework your cautious mind can construct. The constellation answered the question. The direction is confirmed. The 3 stars and this 4th one have formed a pattern so clear that your spirit confirmed it before I finished describing it. And the window the direction is pointing you through has a timeline that does not accommodate the luxury of extended deliberation. Read the sky and walk. I know what your mind is constructing right now, my child. It is building a secondary verification system, a requirement for additional confirmation before the feet are permitted to follow the direction the stars just revealed. One more sign, one more conversation, one more knowing to make absolutely certain before the risk of movement is taken. That is the old perception speaking. And the old perception was the one that missed 3 signs in a single week. The new perception does not require redundant verification. Star navigators who read the sky correctly the first time do not scan for confirmation. They move, because the sky is legible, and the direction is clear, and the window between reading and acting is the space where divine timing either meets human obedience or is delayed by human caution until the moment passes. Do not let the moment pass. When the opportunity that the constellation is pointing toward presents itself, and it will present itself in a form so ordinary your old perception would have dismissed it, do not dismiss it. Receive it with the navigator eyes this message just activated. See the star in the ordinary moment. Recognize the direction it is confirming, and step through the opening with the confidence of someone whose sky is no longer empty, but fully, permanently, overwhelmingly readable. The sky has spoken. Your feet must answer. You made it to the readable sky, my beloved child, and I need you to stand beneath it long enough to feel what it is like to look up and see direction instead of darkness. Look up. Not with the desperate scanning that defined the past months, the frantic, anxious, searching sweep of a person who is afraid the sky is empty. With the calm, steady gaze of a navigator who has been taught to read what was always written above them. The stars have not moved. The arrangement has not changed. What changed is you, and the you that stands beneath this sky right now sees a completely different universe than the you who pressed play on this message, carrying the ache of unanswered prayers. The prayers were answered. You just learned the language they were answered in. I want to thank you for something the sky blindness made almost unbearable to sustain. Thank you for continuing to look up. Thank you for scanning a sky you could not read night after night without concluding that the emptiness was proof of abandonment. Thank you for praying into what felt like a ceiling, while the ceiling was actually a sky so full of arranged direction that the density of it was the very thing making it unreadable to an eye that had not yet received the upgrade. My dear child, You were never beneath an empty sky. You were beneath the fullest sky of your life. And the pain of those months was the pain of a navigator standing under overwhelming direction without the language to decode it. Let the warmth settle now. The warmth of a readable sky. The warmth of a God who did not withhold signs but wrote them in a dialect that required this exact message at this exact moment to become legible. The warmth of knowing that from this day forward, every ordinary moment is a potential star, and every arrangement is a potential constellation, and the sky above your life will never again look like the random, empty, silent darkness you feared it was. The sky is full. The navigator can read it, and the God who arranged the stars is standing beside you, pointing upward with a smile that says, "Now you see." Type now, "I see," if tears are forming, because the sky you thought was empty just revealed itself as the fullest sky of your life, and you are standing beneath it for the first time with eyes that can read what was always written there. You are not the person who stands beneath an unreadable sky anymore, my beloved child. That identity, the one who scanned and saw nothing, the one who prayed for signs and concluded they never arrived, the one who almost navigated by the absence of direction, because the presence of it was written in a language their eyes had not yet learned, the one who stood beneath the fullest sky of their life and called it empty. That identity was permanently retired the moment the fourth star locked into position and the constellation became visible. You are a navigator now, and navigators do not return to sky blindness. The perception upgrade that occurred during this message is not temporary. It is structural. The framework that converts ordinary moments into readable stars has been permanently installed in your navigational system. Tomorrow morning, when you wake up, the sky will be readable. Next week, when a conversation lingers, your spirit will flag it as a star rather than filing it as noise. Next month, when a knowing arrives without natural cause, your navigator eyes will plot it as a coordinate rather than dismissing it as imagination. My dear child, you will never again mistake a full sky for an empty one. The 3 signs that were missed this week are not lost. They are now readable, retroactively decoded by a perception that sees them not as random moments that happen to occur in sequence, but as a deliberately arranged constellation that carries the specific direction your specific prayer requested. The answer is in the sky, and the sky is permanently legible. From this moment forward, you carry the identity of someone who reads stars, not someone who waits for lightning, not someone who begs for signs that were already given, someone whose eyes are calibrated to detect the divine in the ordinary, to perceive direction in conversations that linger, knowings that arrive without cause, and doors that close with purpose. You are fluent in the language of stars, and a fluent navigator never goes lost. God sent 3 signs this week, and you missed all of them. But you did not miss the final one. And the final one was never just another sign. It was the teaching moment that made every sign readable from this day, until the last day your eyes look up at a sky that will never again appear empty, to a navigator who has been permanently taught to read it. The sky is full, the stars are arranged, the constellation is confirmed, and the navigator who learned to read them will walk in direction for the rest of their life, never again confusing a full heaven for an absent God. Subscribe to this channel so that every time God arranges a new constellation above your life, the message reaches you before the navigational window closes. You are not someone who scans an empty sky anymore. You are a navigator fluent in the language of stars. The next message carries the next constellation, and the eyes that just opened will read it the moment the first star appears. Type star reader if you are leaving this message permanently changed. Knowing the sky was never empty, the signs were never withheld, the 3 were never missed, but simply unread. And the God who arranged the stars just gave you the language to read every ordinary moment as the divine direction it was always designed to carry.